I guess this actually, for me, and the relationship with Bassendean Primary School started back in 2018, I think 2018. They participated in the Blue Butterfly Project, which was at Trillion Trees. Trillion Trees was dedicated to, and are dedicated to, revegetating some of the 3 trillion trees that have been decimated. And so they're about revegetation. So they'd invited me to create a project that engaged community with what they do. Well, I do really, large-scale puppetry work, and I work with community engagement process into puppetry, and also work with Noongar elders and artists and that cultural ecology knowledge, bringing that together. So Bassendean joined the Blue Butterfly Project, and that was with Uncle Noel Manor, and with we had the very lovely Gina Williams and Guy Gals come and perform, and we started the whole process of immersion. So immersion into country, and then the kids learning both the science of the ecological relationships and also the cultural knowledge around those ecological relationships and how that was held in story. The kids then had the opportunity to learn on that day about, in particular, a relationship between the blue butterfly, particular the Jacksonia sternbergiana, a particular plant that's been quite removed from the urban centres because of its smell, and a particular ant. And they have a symbiotic relationship that's very important to maintaining cultural, ecological communities. So the kids then got that opportunity to interpret that story into their own words, through art, through writing, through poetry, through movement, and of course, we then did big scale puppets. So we did a giant blue butterfly, and then we created a story, rehearsed it, built it together, and we also joined Woodbridge. We then performed it at Trillion Trees, the story, and it was just, people loved it, and parents loved it. They said if we learned about culture in that way when we were going through school, it would have been an entirely different understanding, especially of our culture. And it was a beautiful way to connect people in also to the environment, to learn about Trillion Trees, and then to take action on tree planting and engagement. This school is a Trillion Tree school. So that's where my relationship with Bassendean began. Kylie had a great vision for a project, the Blue Butterfly Project, the participation that inspired her as a way of doing this to engage community into a different process, and also to really engage her students into the arts and using different artistic practices, but also to really support greater understanding and greater immersion in Noongar culture. So we tried for a couple of years to get some grant funding, and with the impacts of COVID, suddenly we couldn't be in schools. And they were going to be part of a bigger project again. And I think she'd also historically been involved with PF, and the school had done work there. So there was this, and also with the Giants, with big puppets. So that there were all these different streams happening. End of last year, beginning of this year, she said, let's try for a grant. And I said, well, there's COVID-19 Community Recovery Grant. We worked really hard and applied for that, and she got the grant. So that began this huge project of a year-long immersion as opposed to a 6-week project. We really wanted that longevity. And the fact that they'd been given these totems, the red-tailed black cockatoo, the Kaarak, and the marri tree. What does it mean to have a totem? What does it mean to be a custodian? What does it mean to have the responsibility of looking after something? And especially from a Noongar cultural, ecological understanding and perspective. The kids have gone on this big journey because of my work, and because I do a lot of work with Indigenous people, and I have been for 30 years, and those connections to different elders. It was a beautiful way that we could set up a process of immersion again. And this is kind of the process we've been in. From that immersion day where we had nothing, we are now a few days out from the show, and we're in the last stages of creating, and there's been so much creativity, and there's been so much engagement. And the other beautiful thing about this project is it's not just for the school, it's also engaging other community into the project. So it has a broader reach than just the school. The opportunity for children to have an expression, especially in this time where we have to deal with climate change, the opportunity to actually have a richer understanding and connection with both Noongar culture and Noongar artists and elders and custodians. They've also got a stronger relationship to the environment they're in. The fact that you've got this marri tree here, and the Kaaraks have been coming, the red-tailed black cockatoo, to the story is alive and it's living and it's reflected in what the children are doing and expressing. It's not just a school project, it has that pebble effect where you drop a pebble and it sends a ripple. It's kind of why this project is so important, and to me it really matters that puppetry can be such a powerful and beautiful way of both bringing people into a process of art making, but also a way of expressing, and using giant spectacular puppets as a particular kind of wow factor that lifts community and lifts spirit. At the moment, so many of the stresses and pressures to do with COVID, to do with climate change, it's a really lovely way of community spirit coming together and elevating and rising. I think it's been a huge project to undertake. It's been such huge enthusiasm because there's so many levels and layers to it, from the original ideas to the drawing, to the designing, to the building of the structures, and a lot of the techniques of cane bending, of wiring. They're quite challenging techniques. So there are some kids who've just excelled at that and some haven't. Other kids have excelled in other areas. We also did shadow puppetry that's been filmed. That was a bit easier for some of them. I think in the majority they've really engaged. It's been an immense engagement and an immense amount of work. And I think the opportunity to showcase their work through the art exhibition alongside the puppetry performance is brilliant. It's of a level that's not, I think it's probably much higher than what they would usually necessarily undertake. At the moment they're pretty tired. It's pretty hot. It's the end of the year. There's one more week to go of school and they would prefer to be out of here than practicing in the heat, big puppets. So there's a bit of resistance at the moment, but I think that will also change, and they have been doing an awesome, awesome job. When they do the show, I think a lot more things. There's going to be relief, but I think they're also going to feel something quite different, something quite other that they probably hadn't expected. And I think what's really lovely too is that the town of Bassendean, the local government, has already come in and seen the work and just been absolutely blown away by it, and the school's been invited to actually perform next year an excerpt of the story. That's pretty special. And that also ties in with some of the Noongar elders' visions of how they want to see the future changing, with Noongar culture being valued, respected, people learning much more about how valuable knowledge is and how important it is at the moment for looking after the places we live in. This also then kind of supports their vision, but bringing it to life. So for these kids, hopefully that will also, whatever experience they have, it will be embedded in their being and their memory forever. And there may be, hopefully there will be moments along their life journey where things will make more sense, or they'll connect differently, or it's an experience they will have gone through. I think they've had a huge learning experience. I certainly have too with everyone. It's been gorgeous getting to know the kids and the challenges that go with that for each individual. And there's some fantastic artists in this school, fantastic talent. It's beautiful. And I think it's a really rare and great opportunity to do something like this in a school, and I'm hoping it can show ways of doing things that have a lot of possibility, opportunity and strength for community and learning and education. I think the highlight has been this last week especially, of seeing the hard work of the kids really start to bring these to life. The thing about puppets and puppetry, we were saying to the little ones today, your heart and spirit, that's what brings a puppet to life. These aren't just objects that you carry, they're flying them, and there's points where these puppets became the characters. And that's a moment that in puppetry and professional puppetry, when that's happening, that's what it's about. And it's about them becoming these living creatures that tell the story. And to see these moments where the little teams of Kaarak puppeteers and Warranong puppeteers, those moments happen, and seeing these puppets actually come to life. And the kids can't see it, but you can outside. That was such a special moment for me, and I'm so proud of all the kids and how hard they've worked. They've achieved an enormous amount, and it's going to look very, very beautiful, what they're doing. They don't know how much they've achieved, which is really, really special. That has been an absolute highlight for me. And I think another moment today, we had one class who hasn't actually had much opportunity to connect, and they came in and they looked at the puppets. I said, you know what these are? And someone said, oh, it's a Kaarak. And I said, yes, and what's that? And someone saying, oh, it's a red-tailed cockatoo, and what's this? I said, it's a warradong, and I said, who knows what a warradong is? And they said, I think it's a crow. And I said, yes, except we call them ravens here, but it's a crow. And so even though they haven't necessarily been involved in any of the workshops that I've run, the whole year, that whole connecting, they've absorbed things. So the learning process has happened anyway by virtue of their engagement in other aspects of the story. They're going to be little flowers dancing and having that opportunity to explain the story to them and talk about the puppets. They know that their moment is really valuable in the story, and that these big puppets are going to be flying around them, and they're going to be the flowers that are all part of Gilbert. So to see their little beings all start making sense for them, and they're part of something that's actually much bigger and really exciting, that was also really special for me, because they're the littlest. And when the littlest get it, there's an opportunity for the biggest to get it. And they're the people, the grandmas, the grandfathers, the people who come and see it. So that was a really lovely moment, and it also kind of affirms to me why we do this. These little moments just come into people's being, and they see the world differently because of it. It's really reinforcing. The whole gift of storytelling, you experience something that is not in the ordinary. You experience something that is extraordinary. I love creating opportunities for young people especially to experience that and to go, this is something that makes the world and your life better, and it makes the world a better place. And the joy of doing that as part of a very big team of people is really special, because it's like with all of these, every little twist of wire, someone's hand has twisted that wire. Someone has bent every piece of this cane. Someone has put there's so many hands and so many hearts that have made this come to life. And so every little twist says, that little twist was important. Your part in this is really important. And there's a sense of, you can be part of something, your contribution matters. And I think, again, going back to what we were saying before about climate change and things that we're facing like COVID, it's quite often people feel that I don't matter, what can I do? But these sorts of projects says every little bit matters. You're part of something that matters, and that's really important. No matter how small it is, it matters. Hopefully that's something that, you know, when they look around, oh, I was a part of that, I did that, I was part of this. That deeper sense of then, through that we connect and become a community, and we grow a community, and we expand a community. And after this, those relationships matter more. Hopefully out of this, then there are more people that are going to go, oh, Bassendean's a school that does a lot more. Their way of teaching, they connect the community. The school is part of a community, but the community is also part of the school, and the community is not just the parents. It's not just the school community. It's a hub within a broader space. It becomes part of an ecology itself. That's what I also really love about trying to enable that experience to happen. And that the arts can be an expression of many, many things. I mean, this poor Kaarak, they lose their homes to fire. They lose their homes to us chainsawing. They come looking for somewhere else and they get chased by bees. You know, they come looking for something else, they're trying to feed him, but, you know, the warradong comes and chases them away. Then they're just poor things, they're not designed to take off from the ground, and they're having to get food from the ground because food sources are scarce, and they're getting hit by cars and cats and dogs. It's not like it's all nice. There's realities of how difficult it is. But that also says art can tell the story. Art can be a way of talking about these things, and through creating that, we can, one, raise awareness. We can also raise empathy and compassion, and from that we can take action to do something. Hopefully, a lot of the takeaway is that we can use these things to actually express what matters to us. That's the power of the arts, and if we can make people see, feel, listen, that's why it's so important. It's not just something you do as a hobby or a recreation. We've always been there. We've always left our mark as human beings. We left our mark on the walls of caves many thousands of years ago. We're still leaving our mark on walls. Always going to be a really important part of our humanity. If we lose that, we've got a problem. So it's really lovely to be part of enabling young people, children, families to value the importance of art and being artists, and that your creativity matters as much as the next person.
So what inspires you to do what you do?
Well, I love puppets. I love large-scale puppets. They lift people out of the ordinary. One of my commitments as a professional puppeteer is also trying to get people to understand that puppets aren't just something you jiggle on a stick, or they're embedded with what I call animate qualities. I'm an animateur, which is something that brings something to life. It's our hands, our hearts, who we are as people is what makes them come alive. And I think in this era of technology where everything's so digitally oriented, people forget or are unused to or don't have the confidence in working with our hands on things like this. And of course COVID has affected everything. We're very fortunate here in WA, but our ability to be close to people, proximate. For me, I think where I'm seeing communities become a bit disconnected and disintegrated or separate or isolated, this kind of work brings people together. And when you start bringing people together, you start sharing stories with each other. When you start sharing stories, you start to hear someone else's ideas, perspectives, and we get to see and feel and hear and be part of the diversity of what community actually is. And then there's all this problem solving that has to happen because we have these challenges, and some things don't work and some things do work, and some things are really easy and some things are really hard. So we find ways of dealing also with conflict as well as some collaboration. So they're really lovely ways of making, as I said before, these opportunities that people go through something together. They create something together, and through that they create community. And when you've got a community that is strong, when times become challenging, as we are in COVID, there is someone that can listen, or you can reach out to, or you can ask, and you're not afraid to, or you're not ashamed to, or you're not embarrassed to, or you don't know that stranger. You're part of community. You know, I grew up in a neighbourhood where you could go and ask, your neighbour 2 doors down the street, or look, we've run out of sugar, have you got some sugar? And we just do that. Communities now, I think neighbourhoods now are a little bit more disconnected and dislocated. So doing these sorts of things brings people together. They get to know each other. We reduce our fear and actually, generate friendship and connection and relationship. And I think that's a much healthier world to be in. That's part of my inspiration. I think also as an artist, when you're an artist, something drives you. You become a bit of a vessel or a bit of a channel for something. It's just how it is. And you just kind of have to sometimes accept that. There's a lot of love or passion for this kind of work because it's not something that happens every day. There is something about large-scale puppets and puppetry that just take people into another world. And for me, my work with Indigenous people, and Noongar people in particular, but also all First Nations people across Australia that I work with, it's a really powerful way of people being able to bring their stories that are embedded in the country, out of the country, into life, and to show the scale of some of those ancestral beings who were massive, huge. They shaped the landscapes. Large-scale puppetry itself is a really lovely contemporary art form that I found that, especially working with Indigenous people, that it's a really great collaboration because their stories can be shared in very powerful ways and then everyone can be part of doing it. For me, also a huge part of my inspiration is to make a difference that the cultures of Australia are valued, respected, honoured, and that in the way many elders talk about the songlines and the stories on country, that people then understand that they're living, they're present all the time, and we're part of them and they're part of us. So it's a beautiful way to connect with them. So that's another huge part of my inspiration. And at the end of the day, I like creating joy in the world.
I was doing the Mundabiddi. I was doing a bike ride. It's from Perth to Albany. It's a mountain bike trail. Throughout the entirety of it, it feels like you're constantly surrounded by the Kaarak. Sometimes it just feels like either you're following them or they're following you. You're brought down with them through that whole journey. And I was telling that story to Karen when we caught up at the Kaarak Festival in Midland. She says, "Oh wow, that's amazing. We got some Kaaraks here. They're about to run on stage. Can you come and give us a hand?" And I was like, "Oh, all right, spontaneous." So I ran out and met some of the performers from Bassendean Primary who were sort of given the charge of looking after the Kaaraks and puppeteering the Kaaraks. And they just needed a little bit of guidance in operating the puppet and flying it and the pathway that they had to take through the crowd. So I sort of came in as a minder and as a puppeteer. And that's actually kind of where it started. Karen said that she was working on this amazing project, Bassendean Primary, and I lived just across the road. Yeah, it was kind of serendipitous that she asked, why don't you step on it? And at the moment, I'm just sort of meeting all of the students who are involved, giving a few hints and tips as a puppeteer operating these puppets, because I've operated similar ones with Kaarak and other companies beforehand. And today, now, we're just repairing and building some more puppets and repairing the ones so that they can be rehearsed with on the Tuesday. And then I'll be there on the performance during the evening, just being where I'm needed.
What have been your highlights of working on this project so far?
Number one is the enthusiasm that I've seen the students have for it, especially when the Wardang is chasing the Kaaraks. I think there's so much joy and fun in just getting to recreate that. That's just so fun to watch and so fun to just be a part of. Just hearing these little snippets of conversations that some of the students were having. I was remarking that I heard a group of boys talking about, one of them wanted to move down south after school, and was imagining living on a farm and going fishing and going hunting and being part of pest control, and he wanted to shoot kangaroos and emus. And all the boys around him were like, well, why would you want to do that? Those are native animals. And he was like, well, but they're pests. Like, no, they're not pests. They're native. We have to look after them. We have to take care of the kangaroo. We have to take care of the emu. And I just thought, like, wow, that's not a conversation that I would have had as a year 6. Probably thought about how cool guns were back in year 6 as a very stereotypical boys thing to be like. And just hearing them, valuing and treasuring native wildlife in a conservation lens, I was just really impressed with it. And that actually brought me a lot of joy. I thought, wow, if they're learning that through this experience now, what does that mean for the future when they're older? Yeah. So I try and work as much as I can as a puppeteer. I've been involved in a project with Karen before, and hopefully some more in the future. I also work with Spare Parts Puppet Theatre. I've done shows with them in the past, and will be doing shows with them in the coming year. I also have a part-time job, as most artists do. But creating theatre and creating community-engaged performances and using puppetry is something that I'm trying to take steps towards doing more frequently. So, oh yeah, plant more trees.
The inspiration came from many years ago, around about 2017 to about 2019. We've been involved in the Perth International Arts Festival. We were invited to be part of the Seeds for Change project. And the Seeds for Change project allows schools to be involved in a light sculpture by making seed pods out of paper mache. And then our school was instrumental in making about 300. Each student in the school made one. It was a big process. What ended up happening was that we were gifted the Kaarak and the Marri tree as totems. We didn't really know what to do with them to start with, so we just sat on it for a couple of years. Over that time, our Marri tree, which is about 350 years old, was showing signs of distress. Some replanting was done around it. We moved some bitumen and all that sort of thing around it. Jacqueline and I got into conversations about how we can really sort of help that tree, but also make some connections with those totems that we were given through the Perth International Arts Festival. I came up with some sort of formula as to what I wanted to do, and I wanted to take kids on a journey of learning about how to be good custodians. But in that I had to do a lot of research and find the right people to be involved in this project. In 2018 I was introduced to a beautiful puppeteer, an animator and creative director, Karen Hethy. I finally had what I wanted. I saw an opportunity there to be able to utilise her skill set in hopefully engaging in other artists as well to come on board, to tell the story of the Kaarak and the Marri, tracking them through the year and through the Noongar 6 seasons. I was fortunate enough to meet and get on board some fabulous artists, Peter Farmer, Miranda Farmer. We had Kobe Morrison, who was a singer-songwriter. Derek Nannup, who is one of the most amazing storytellers people will ever meet. Arnie Lynn Cox has been our consultant and was really instrumental in making sure that we were engaging in Noongar culture in the right way and in a respectful manner. Miranda Farmer, who is an absolute wealth of knowledge, of knowing about the traditional ecological knowledge around not only Bassendean but in the southwest. Once I had all those people in place and they all sort of went, yeah, let's be on board, I had a project. So that's sort of how it all stemmed about. So it's been many years, but the combination of all that led to a Kaarak and Marri live performance where we were able to showcase what the kids had learnt about how to be a good custodian. One of the most beautiful things that I heard Miranda say was, we have to use our head to think about the Kaarak and Marri, and we have to use our eyes to be able to make sure that we look after the animal, and we all then have to share that knowledge by talking about it and sharing that with other people. And that's what we were able to do on the 14th of December. For me, professionally, the most inspiring year, because I've been able to have a significant established and emerging artists coming into my room, sharing their skill set and sharing their knowledge about what they do and how they do it, and share it with the kids. And that has been probably the most amazing thing for me, to be able to have those people come into my space and work alongside me, and for us to create a bit of magic, really. So, yeah. The positivity about it all has been fantastic. I love the little moments when a kid will just come up to me and just sort of go, Miss, the Kaaraks are having babies or something, and they don't say the red-tailed black cockatoo, whereas at the beginning they did, and now they call the bird the Kaarak, and they talk about the marri trees that are near their block. This is such an important thing for these kids to take on board, because marri trees are everywhere around here in small little pockets. And the Kaaraks, their flight path is through Bassendean. Many students have Kaaraks in their backyard, so to speak. I've just loved the fact that the kids have been on this journey where they're learning about the 6 seasons, and they're really learning it and talking about it. And then all that information has been put down throughout the year on great big posters around the classroom. This live performance showcased what they've learnt through the year and how invested they are in that process. I think the kids will never forget what a Kaarak is, and they'll never forget what a marri tree is. And that's what good custodians do.
How do you feel the performance night went?
Look, quite honestly, the vibe was electric and it was magic, but I was too focused on mics and students being in the right place at the right time to really get a general feel. But the feedback has been phenomenal, and the general vibe, it had a real festival feel. It had this real sense of ownership. My boy, who is in year 6, who usually goes around dragging his knuckles around the ground, his words were, Mum, that was awesome. And I just went, for my boy to say something like that was magical. I've had lots of kids come up to me and said, I didn't think it was going to be like that. I didn't think we were going to see that. And I didn't see this part. And I didn't know this was going to happen. I think that lends to the magic of it all. The smiles on people's faces when they're still talking about it to me 3 days later has just been so rewarding. And the kids who say, that was great. And people coming up and going, we've never seen anything like that. That it had that real Perth festival feel to it. I just love the fact that people took something away from that night, and even if it was just that they took away that there were light installations, or that the words that were spoken, or the songs that were sung, or a child they focused on. I just think if they can take one element away from home and remember that, that's my job done. It was, the feel of it was electrifying, and the high that most people walked away from was beautiful. Bassendean Primary has not done anything like that before. We've never done anything at night time or to that sort of scale, and it's only through the absolute privilege of being able to have a grant that allowed me to employ such magnificent artists to be involved in it. But also the goodwill of many community members who just said, Kylie, I see what you're doing. How can I help? How can I get on board? What can I do? We had a whole bunch of people coming out of the woodwork, so to speak, and they would come into my art room and lend a hand for a couple of hours or do some sewing or come in and help bump in or film, all sorts of things. I think that is the testament to our community saying we really appreciate what is happening here, what our kids are coming back and saying that they're learning about Noongar culture and about language and about the environment. They go, how can we help? How can we help do that more?
Talking to one person now, asked them how do you think it was, and they're like, it was a real production, wasn't it? And I was talking to someone else, and his granddaughter got home and was just on this high still.
Yeah, look, I think my boy didn't get to sleep until about 10, so I can't imagine what some parents were saying. You know, they all had to go to school the next day.
In the kindy class, there are all these parents who have bad night's sleep because their kids are like getting up in the night still on this high.
It's got a different feel at night.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that kids experience art in a manner which makes magic. And I think light installation allows everything else to disappear and you just focus on those little beams of light. We had a perfect night, and I think it was part of the magic is that the kids were performing but were also experiencing at the same time. It wasn't old hat to them, it was something new that was happening. Those little happy little incidences that were happening right then and there, they got to perform and experience that at the same time. For a lot of people it was eye-opening. I think that they thought that their kids in this community couldn't produce something like that. Now they can walk away and go, you know what, if that's what our kids can do and if that's what this community can do, what else can we do? It leads to other opportunities and hopefully more ideas and more ways of experiencing things. They now see there's opportunity there and they can do it if they've got the will and they've got the right environment and the right people behind them. These things can happen. So it's great.
It's like you practice and you practice and practice, but then on night performance, you realise it's just so much more. And it's just you're carried away in it, and you realise how amazing it is.
Yes, yes, and I think that's what those kids realised. I know many kids came up to me and just went, I just didn't believe it was going to be that. They can't express exactly what it is. They just go, we didn't expect that. we didn't know it was going to be that big.
Yeah. I think it definitely blew all the parents' expectation. One parent said, we were like, oh, why is it going to be at night? Why is it going to be so late? And at start, and we were like, oh, this is why.
And you know, even the kids didn't get that. When you've trained to always be home by 6 o'clock after a school production, trained to just sit there and be passive, and they had no idea what to expect. When it started, I think it started to dawn on them. A lot of people first started off going a few grumblings about the time and it was late and blah, blah, blah. And within 15 minutes, that was like, there was a lull. People were just mesmerised by what they were seeing. Everywhere they looked, there was something going on. If it was not the puppets, it was the kids. If it wasn't that, it was the screen or it was the music. Or there was something there for everyone. It allowed to showcase lots of different skill set. And by the way, Janine Oxenham was our creative movement person and director, and she was the most generous person you'll ever come across who can just understand what the capabilities of all students and what they can do and how to put that in a meaningful manner into dance and creative movement. I was just really fortunate to get the right group of people together and for them all to be on board and for them to also be there for that night. So it was great.
And I know by the end, when I was filming, I would start to film up the back near where the parents were, and there were parents standing up and moving around to film the end bits.
I think people they were just happy. In the end, what I wanted was for people to walk away and realise that we are capable of doing things like this, but also to take away the fact that we are custodians, and now that they've all shared that story and they know that story, that they take on board those things as well, and that they look after the things around them a little bit more. And I know that the students of this school are definitely going to take that forward, and they're doing that with their families.
Through projects like this, you don't just learn about the knowledge, but you get the chance to work collaboratively and experience performing.
And I think it's really important that kids get to work alongside established and emerging artists. They see that you can be in the creative arts. These are real jobs. These people are there to tell stories. Because in the end, no matter what form of art you do, you're there to tell a story, whether it's a personal one or a story that has been given to you to tell. Through movement, song, dance, art, puppetry, you can tell a story that engages other people. And that's what I want people to do and learn about them.
How are you hoping to continue all this?
There's always a million ideas coming in my head. We have become custodians. We have a partnership with Trillion Trees, and our partnership is to be part of that corridor of planting trees. So we have made that relationship, and part proceeds of things that we've got throughout this year. Donation is being made to Trillion Trees. Also to the Kaarak and Rehabilitation Centre, we have adopted two Kaaraks, a male and a female, that each year we intend to donate money to so that we can look after the birds there, and our Year 6s go up there every year and see how the birds are going. And look, they're just the little things. I think on an artistic level, the seed's been sown, and I think I would dearly love, maybe not next year, because I don't think my body will cope with it. There's already other ideas. I would really dearly love to do a story about the river, because in the end, it's about telling local stories. The stories I want to tell are contemporary stories that kids make, and they can then share to the community. So that's onward, looking forward, and establishing more relationships with community and with artists. And I think as a school, we have the opportunity to bring people into our environment and to allow kids to see these people in action. And that's my job, is to make those connections and make deep and meaningful connections. And I hope that we get to continue those connections we've made so far. Nana Roma Widmer, and Auntie Lynn Cox, Peter and Miranda Farmer, Kobe Morris and Janine Oxenham, Karen Hethy, Kaarak and John Winter through Trillion Trees. They're just a few of the people that we've made connections with, and I hope to continue those conversations and see how maybe what they might look like in the future. Because it won't be the same. Sometimes it might just be a conversation over the phone. Sometimes it might be just finding out what they're doing and then going and being in their space for a little bit. It's all about keeping the connections that we've already established and making new ones, and finding out whether or not we can just pull people in, but also pull our stuff out to the community. So, watch this space. We'll see where it goes from there.
Have you got any particular highlights from throughout the year?
The most special one that I have had was actually just here outside. Peter Farmer was working on finishing off, and he was just touching up some of the Six Seasons mural that he's been working on with all the students in the school. A bevy of little kids sort of were just surrounding him because it was recess time, and they were just watching him. He was just working with a Posca paint pen, and he's just doing his thing, which is just working in his nice quiet space, and kids were just watching. And one little 5-year-old girl was just watching him, and she was mesmerised by him, and he took her hand and he drew around her hand, and as he was drawing around her hand, she just spontaneously, I'm going to cry, started singing the Six Seasons song. And he just looked at her and smiled, and then he looked at me and smiled, and I just went, there you go, that's it, all there, all there. For her to just spontaneously start singing about the Six Seasons, I think was really memorable for him. But for me, it just meant that there's been connections made. From this beautiful little 5-year-old to this 50-year-old man, there was a connection. Out of everything, that's the moment I remember the most. They may not remember everything, but they'll know the sound of the current. I just want them to care more about everything around them. Through the arts, we allow storytelling to be embedded in the heart, in the mind and in the soul so beautifully. And I hope to do this for everyone.
I think everyone has the Six Seasons song stuck in their head at some point.
Yeah, same here. And the current song. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I wake up in the morning singing that song and I go, I really got to get that song out of my head.
And Mum's like, oh, I have a Six Seasons song stuck in my head. And I had a Six Seasons song stuck in my head. And then Mum started singing. I'm like, no, I want a different part to you. Don't do that to me.
Yeah, I've woken up many times when I've been thinking that. But what's beautiful is that we have this beautiful, rich culture that has been with us for 60 to 80,000 years, and we know so little about it. In some cases, they're finding out themselves about their culture. And it's about making a balance and finding that balance and realising that in the last 200 years, we've been fed a history, and that there is a much deeper history that is considerate of the environment, that has a lot of scientific understanding and knowledge about the country, the budget that we are standing on. If we're just open to listening to that and open to finding out more about it, things will be better. Things will always be better when we can share knowledge and when we can share an understanding of looking after and caring for things. I think that's what we need to do as storytellers, is to find a way to share, respect each other's spaces and understand that there's so much more that we need to learn and that we can learn together.